This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Coming up on the Payoff. This is like the Payoff's version of the white whale. I had chased this man down for some time, and he was patient with me, and I got him on the show. His name is Damon West. And this conversation, it's not so much a conversation. I'm like captive by this guy's message 80% of the time. We just wrapped up the interview. But he's a former Division I football player. He went to prison for 7 years, was the mastermind of a group of people that basically they burglarized people's houses all throughout the Dallas area. And then he got sober and his life changed. Was given a life sentence. And he's now has a life service, right? And that service is what he spread throughout the world with his message. The Coffee Bean, his book, bestseller. He's one of the biggest inspirational speakers in America. Speaks to, the best college football teams, the best corporations that we have here. And we're so happy to have him join us here today. So very lucky to have Damon West, and very lucky to also have this guy, Kevin Souza. All right, I want to start off with you, and we're going to do this again, but because I got to read the quote, I want to make sure we get it. This is L.D. McClain, your teammate at North Texas, and I asked him, because he and I have worked some ESPN games together, I said, give me a scouting report on your man Damon West. He said he was fearless, tough as nails, smartest quarterback I've ever been around. He was the gunslinger, not a gunslinger. He was the gunslinger.
Brother, that is so cool. I mean, as a quarterback, that's what you want to hear, right? Not just that you were the gunslinger, because I had a cannon, but that you had it between the ears, too. It's such a cerebral position to play quarterback. But, man, look, I feel the same about LaDarren. LaDarren was an incredible talent from Lewisville, Texas, and he was like a little brother to me. And, in fact, little brother, I brought him through my fraternity, the Lambda Chi Alpha fraternity in North Texas. LaDarren McClain was the first black man ever inducted into that fraternity. He made history, and he was the right guy at the right time. And look, it wasn't the easiest push to get him through for some of those people in the fraternity that had fixed mindsets that were stuck in a different era, a different time. But LaDarren McClain was such a special guy and a special person. And he was the guy that made everybody see past the color of his skin. They saw the content of his character, to quote Martin Luther King. So he's a very special guy, a person near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, he spoke very highly of you, obviously, on and off the field. And I want to start your journey there as we take you through a little bit of your story. I can relate a lot to your upbringing. It seems like you grew up in a nice area, two-parent home. Yeah, I always say, and this is me, I'm not speaking for you, but like born on third base, thought I hit a triple. Yeah. And the reason I can relate to you is because athleticism, and you more so than me, really took over for you, I would imagine, early in your life. Walk me through a little bit the start of Damon West, the football player, and the young man.
Yeah, a good place to start this is kind of like in the middle of this story, this journey. Whenever I was in prison, and we're going to get to that in a little while, me going to prison, I got sentenced to life in prison for engaging in organized crime. And it was a RICO case, and I was the head of the organized crime ring. I'm up for parole in 2015, and the lady from parole that interviews me, she's got my criminal file in front of her. It's about an inch thick. It's your jacket. They call it your jacket. And in this jacket is everything about you, your entire life story, everything. She's flipping through the page of this thing for about 20 seconds, Pete, and she slams the file shut and she pushes it away. And she's telling me, she said, Mr. West, I came here today to ask you one question for your parole hearing. She said, this is going to be a one-question test, but the answer to my question is not in the file about the guy that I'm reading about who committed all those crimes in Dallas, Texas, all those years ago. She said, we don't see a lot of Damon West come through the criminal justice system because you had it all. You had every advantage, every privilege, and every opportunity in life. She said, you are the definition of a privileged person in this country. And she was right, man. Pete, I came from a great two-parent home. I grew up in a little town called Port Arthur. Port Arthur is down where Louisiana and Texas touch on the Gulf Coast. Little blue-collar town, little refinery town. My mom was a school teacher and a nurse. My dad was a sports writer. In fact, we talk about my dad makes history in Southeast Texas. In 1971, he becomes the first sports writer to put black athletes on the front page of sports pages.
No kidding.
71. Yeah, first time it ever happened. It was a running back from Port Arthur Lincoln High School named Joe Washington Jr. Now, Joe Washington Jr. would go on to become Little Joe Washington.
Little Joe from Oklahoma, right? Went to Oklahoma. Yeah, Oklahoma. Went on to play for the Redskins, the Colts. I mean, a dynamic football player. But when my dad puts Joe Washington Jr. on the front page of the sports page in 71, people lose their minds over that. They break his windows. They slit his tires. They send a bunch of hate mail to him. But my dad, he saved all the hate mail. And he one day in the 80s when I'm growing up as a kid, he brings all the hate mail down from the attic, and he makes me read every letter of hate mail, every nasty negative word that people say about my father and my mother, because my dad puts a black guy on the cover of sports page. But my dad told me this. He said, Damon, I want you to see what it looks like to take a stand and do the right thing. Because he said sometimes, Damon, in life, taking a stand and doing the right thing, it means you're going to stand alone. But he said it's always okay to stand alone as long as you're standing on the right side of history. Tremendous influence from my father, y'all. I mean, 25 years later when I go to prison, this is the principle I'm going to rebuild my entire life on. I was a good student growing up, Pete, but I was a great athlete. I mean, like LaDarren McClain said, God blessed me with a cannon for a right arm. And this is Texas, brother. We love our high school football. And I got to grow up under the Friday Night Lights as a 3-year starting quarterback for a 5A school. But, you know, in high school, I had a lot of behavioral issues, and it stems back to having a bad belief system. When I was 10 years old, I got in my dad's beer for the first time. First time I ever put alcohol in my system. And the thing about it is I liked the way the alcohol felt, and I wanted to do more. I wanted to try other things too. I started smoking cigarettes when I was a little kid. I smoked my first joint when I was 12 years old. I've got addictive behavior starting at a very young age, but I'm the quarterback, man. No one's going to tell me to stop or what I can and can't do. That would eventually catch up with me. But I was good, man. I went to North Texas where I met LaDarren. When I was 20 years old, I became the starting quarterback for a Division I team. I thought I'd made it. I thought this was what life was all about. But September 21st, 1996, against Texas A&M, I suffered a career-ending injury. Never played college football again. And I came up to a fork in the road in life. And those fork in the roads were big days, Pete. You know, those are the days that life knocked you down hard. You get up, you dust yourself off, but you make a choice. You either make the right choice, go the right way, the wrong choice, go the wrong direction. And on September 21st, 96, against A&M, when my career is over, I make a lot of wrong turns, and it's about drugs. Now it's the hardcore drugs, cocaine, ecstasy pills. But I'm functional as an addict. I graduate college in 99. I move off to Washington, D.C. I get a job working in the United States Congress. I worked for a guy running for president of the United States. And then in 2004, I moved back to Dallas, Texas, to be a stockbroker for one of the biggest Wall Street banks in the world, UBS, United Bank of Switzerland. Yeah. And it's at that job as a broker in 2004 that another broker introduced me to meth one time when he sees me sleeping at work. And Pete, introduction of meth into my system, it was like touching a live wire. You know, it's a drug that's made to get you hooked. It's made in a lab. Smoked it one time, instantly hooked just like that. And I could not give everything away fast enough for that drug, Pete, because that's what we do as addicts, right? We give things away. I tell people all the time, addicts give up their goals to meet their behaviors. You know, driven people, focused people, successful people, they'll give up that bad behavior to meet their goal. And you don't have to be addicted to drugs and alcohol to be an addict in this country. You could be addicted to food, money, clothing, shopping, sex, gambling, the internet, Instagram, pornography, whatever it is. If you're an addict, you'll give up your goals to meet your behaviors every single time. And I was like every addict in history. I gave away my job, my home, my car, my savings account, my family, and my tethering to God. In 18 months, I go from working on Wall Street to living on the streets of Dallas, Texas. And that's when I was homeless. I became a thief. I started breaking into houses, and I put together my own burglary crew. And these burglaries went on from 2005 to 2008 in Dallas, Texas. And a burglary is a serious crime, Pete, because when I broke into people's houses, I didn't just steal property. I stole their sense of security, my victims. And I can't change that. I can't fix it. I can't even apologize to my victim. Texas has a law. You can't apologize to the victim of your crimes. You go back to prison for apologies. And so
my victims live with that for the rest of their lives. But after 3 years of committing property crimes against the people of Dallas, Texas, the Dallas SWAT team on July 30th, 2008, puts an end to the Uptown burglaries.
Now, I want to ask you a quick question. Did you, one thing, we're going to go back and then we're going to go back to what you were just talking about. When you ended up, your career's over, did you find yourself consuming drugs and alcohol to fill a void in your life? Because I think if you're like me, you kind of had it inside you, the addictive gene. But did you notice it went to overdrive when your career was over and you had more time?
Absolutely. Because I didn't just lose my career that day on Kyle Field. I lost my identity. My entire identity was wrapped up in being a college football player. And that's all I had known in high school too. And that identity was gone. I was no longer an athlete anymore. And I see that happen to a lot of people in life, not just athletes and former athletes, but people that put so much of their identity, their self-worth in something external. And, you know, it could be the crowd you want to hang out with. It could be social media, Instagram, you know, TikTok. Your identity doesn't come from the world around you. It comes from inside you. But at 20, when my football career was over, I lost my identity that day. And that was why the drugs came in, because the hallmark of being an addict is you cannot live life on life's terms. That's what being an addict is all about. I couldn't live life on life's terms. And so I put in the chemicals to change the way I felt, because that took me away from the misery and the disappointments of life.
All right, let's jump back forward now. You've been on this spree for 3 years. You've got your crew that you put together. You were the mastermind. Did you feel that the walls might have been closing in, or were you so out of it that you didn't care? Because, you know, these guys bang through your windows. They literally smoke you out.
Yeah, so I'm July 30th, 2008. That's a pivotal day. And I'm sitting on the couch, this little rundown apartment that I live in, a little ratty old couch. And my dope dealer's there. This guy named Tex. It's in Dallas. And I'm telling Tex, he's bringing some dope to me. And I'm telling him, man, you got to go. You got to leave. You can't stay here. And I'm telling him that the cops are closing in on me. The end is near. 10 days before this, Pete, this guy that I was doing all these burglaries with in Dallas, this guy named Dustin. Dustin was my partner in crime. He was my right-hand man. He was the guy that knew everything about our operation. And Dustin was sitting in the custody of the Dallas Police Department. They had picked him up 10 days before. And then they got my partner in crime in custody. So I know it's going to be a matter of time before they're going to have me in custody. Because here's the truth about crime, Pete. Everybody talks. Everybody talks when it comes to crime. Then when prosecutors start throwing out big time in prison, everybody talks. It's self-preservation. It's a natural human instinct. And just as I passed the pipe back to Tex that day, the window on my right blows out and shatters. And then tumbling across my living room floor was a little canister going end over end, and it was smoking on one side. Pete, man, it's like, I know what this canister is going to do, man. I've seen movies like this before, and I try to get out of there as fast as I can, but it's too late. Boom. This flashbang grenade blows up in my face. Bright white light, loud noise, blows me back on the couch. And when I came to, when I can see and hear again, there was a cop standing over me in full SWAT riot gear. His boot was on my chest, the barrel of an assault rifle digging in my eye socket, and he's screaming at the top of his lungs, "Don't move, don't move." And I look up at this barrel of this gun, and I'm like, man, don't worry. Don't worry, right? And one of the SWAT officers comes in, and he screams that out loud, "We got him. We got the Uptown Burglar." That was the name they had for me, Pete, the Uptown Burglar. Before they ever met me, they called me the Uptown Burglar.
Well, and you had some serious mystique going. Just learning about this, you broke into a post office. You had a mailman's outfit you would wear. You would sort of make it so you could walk among people and, you know, they wouldn't even notice you, which is another like alcoholic thing, right? Like we're so brilliant when, you know, anything to get the money to get the drugs, right? This was all for money to buy drugs. This whole ring, because you were with surrounded by other addicts. That's how we do.
Yeah, it was all about drugs. I mean, I didn't have anything to show for it at the end of it. I smoked everything up. And I had one of the first burglaries I ever did. I broke into a post office, stole a mailman uniform, mailbag, hat, everything. And I could walk around neighborhoods with impunity. I mean, no one knows who their mailman looks like. Not many people understand 90%,
especially now. Yeah.
And in these condo buildings in uptown Dallas, some of them would have these mail kiosks, this room that the mailman could go into, and all the slots are in the room. On the outside, you got your key to your one little box. But if you can get inside that room as the mailman, you're going to see boxes that have mail stuffed in them because someone hasn't picked up their mail in a long time. You may even see a box or two that has a note in it that says out of town from this date to this date, hold the mail. You know, that's how the victims were picked in some of the burglaries, right? I'm in the mail room. I know who's home and who's not. Another way that I would decide who was going to become a victim and who wasn't is, you know, once I could gain access into a condo building in Uptown and I got above the first floor, there's no alarm system, or there wasn't back then on anything above first floors. And then when you start seeing above the first floor, you see restaurant flyers and packages that are stacked up, you know that no one's home. And you can, if newspapers were still big back then, right? If newspapers were stacked up, you could even timestamp how long they've been gone, right? Because if you live above the first floor, your back door opens up to a balcony, not a yard. So that's how I picked some of my victims. One of the victims I picked like that was a guy that lived on the 7th floor of the Verona complex, condominium complex, right by the Galleria in Dallas. The guy's name was Marion Barber. Remember Marion Barber?
Oh, yeah. Marion the Barbarian.
Yeah. Marion the Barbarian lived on the 7th floor, man. Marion the Barbarian had a lot of flyers in his door one day. And I didn't know it was even his place, but I got in and gained access to it. And quickly I understood that it was his place and that I did not want to be there if he came home. And so, no, I mean, imagine what that would have been like, right? I mean, I didn't want to be there for any of my victims to see me, to be honest with you, Pete. I mean, I didn't. And that's the thing about the crimes. None of my victims ever saw me. I was a ghost. They never saw me. I never saw them. No one was physically hurt. No weapons were used. I'm an addict, man. I'm breaking into people's houses. I don't want to hurt anybody, but I want to get high. And addicts, we will do anything to get what we want in life. We'll do anything it takes. And that's like being in recovery now, you've got to take that same energy, that same attitude to get to your meetings, man, to work the steps. You know, just because it's raining or snowing outside doesn't mean you don't go to the meeting. If it was raining or snowing outside, Pete, and you want to get high, would you go?
I would go. I'd find a way.
If your dealer said, "Hey, get down here right now. I got you. I got what you need."
You find a way.
Walk in the snow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
I want to talk to you a little bit about, you mentioned you get arrested in 2008 in July, and then in 2009, you're sentenced. Your parents are there. Expand on that a little bit. I mean, it's pretty illuminating when you talk about what your mom said to you and then what happens next.
Yeah. So I get arrested July 30th, 2008. They put me in Dallas County Jail, and my bond quickly goes up to about $1.4 million, which is a no bond. You can't make a bond that high. And I'm resigned to the fact that I'm going to go to this trial. And Dallas County wants to take me to trial. In fact, they get me into a courtroom in 10 months. That's called a rocket docket, Pete. When they can get you into a courtroom 10 months, that's fast. And after 10 months, I go to my trial. It's May 18th, 2009. May 18th, 2009 was the 6th and final day of this trial. And Pete, a 6-day trial for crimes where no one got hurt, it means the evidence of my guilt is overwhelming. Everybody's testified against me that was in the crime spree. And at the end of that long 6-day trial, the jury deliberates for 10 minutes. 10 minutes, brother. I don't know how much Law and Order you watch, but if a jury's gone for 10 minutes, it means they smoked you. And the judge reads the sentence out loud that day. Damon Joseph West, you are hereby sentenced to 65 years in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. Pete, 65 years in Texas is a life sentence in Texas. The jury gave me life that day. Now, right after the trial was over, I get a visit with my parents. They're going to give one last visit before I go to prison. And my mom, she has this conversation with me, and she's telling me, you can't go in and become something you weren't raised to be. And so she tells me, no gangs, no tattoos. Come back as the man we raised, or don't come back at all. I don't know how I'm going to do this, Pete. I'm stunned. I'm floored because I've got this ultimatum from my mom. I get back to my pod in Dallas County Jail. I got 2 months before the prison bus comes to get me. And I'm asking every guy in county frantically that's been to prison before, how am I going to survive? What am I going to do?
You're going to a maximum security facility.
I'm going to go to a supermax, not just a maximum. Yeah. I'm going to a supermax. And supermaxes in Texas, there's like 12 or 14 supermaxes. They don't have a lot of them. And whenever you get a life sentence in Texas, Texas separates out the lifers from the other general population in prison. So you have to live with nothing but lifers for the first 5 years of your incarceration. And it's the most hopeless place you can live in. I mean, imagine living in a world where you've got 500 people who've got life sentences. 95% of them are never going home. That's your environment. That's your neighborhood. It's such a hopeless place. And that, Pete, is why prisons are so dangerous, because there's no hope inside of a prison, right? And when you have a void of hope, negativity, evil, darkness can fill that void, right? It's why the movie, The Shawshank Redemption, is such a good movie. You know, and Shawshank.
Which, by the way, you've been compared to Andy Dufresne by people in prison and out of it.
Yeah, I tell people, and I tell people all the time, you know, the big difference between Andy and I is Andy was innocent. I was guilty, you know? But yes, the comparison to Andy Dufresne is because of this. The movie, the title, Shawshank Redemption, the redemption part of that movie wasn't about Andy Dufresne. The movie's not even about Andy. The redemption is for Red, Morgan Freeman's character. Tell you why it's Red's movie, not Andy's movie, because Red, Morgan Freeman's character, the narrator, when you meet him, Red is a dead man. Red has no hope. All those men in Shawshank Pete were dead because they all had no hope. Remember Brooks? Brooks made it out, man. He made parole after 50 years. Brooks lasted about 2 weeks out there, and he kills himself. But he writes a letter back to the boys in Shawshank, told him what he did and why he did it. And as Andy was reading that letter out to the boys in Shawshank prison, every man in prison understood why Brooks did what he did, because every man there had no hope. They all share the same hopeless mindset. Red, our narrator, explains it for us when he says, I wouldn't make it out there either, Andy. I'm an institutional man now. Red even says the words out loud for us to fully understand. He said hope is a dangerous thing. Now, you're a recovering addict. You've lived in a world where hope is a dangerous thing, right? And that's what prison is like. But Andy tells Red a different thing. He says, you know, get busy living or get busy dying. And by the end of that movie, remember when Red gets out? Yeah. We don't know if Red's going to make it, right? No. Red walks by that pawn shop. The guns are in the window. He stays in the same room that Brooks was in. He sees the sign, the writing where Brooks was here. But Red makes it to that rock wall where Andy told him to go to. And he finds the letter that Andy left him. And he reads that letter, and Andy says those words in that letter that, Red, hope is a good thing. And remember when Red finally finds Andy, Zihuatanejo? Yeah. He's walking on that beach in Mexico, sees Andy on that boat. They look at each other, they smile. I want your listeners, I want y'all to go back and watch that last scene and listen to the character of Red. Listen to his dialogue in the last scene of that movie. Every sentence of that last dialogue starts off with the words, I hope. He says, I hope this, I hope that. In fact, the very last words of the movie Shawshank Redemption, I hope. You can put an exclamation point on that. Red had hope again. And that's what the movie Shawshank was about hope. And Andy Dufresne represented that hope that Red needed. And all those men in Shawshank prison needed. You know, and Andy, another comparison to Andy had a Zihuatanejo. And that Zihuatanejo kept him alive while he was in prison, you know. Andy could see himself on the beach in Zihuatanejo every single day as he carved through that wall. 19 years it took him to carve through that wall. He swam through a sewer, but he envisioned himself. The visualization. Every day that I was in prison, I visualized myself becoming the coffee bean and getting out.
So break down the coffee bean and your relationship with Muhammad, which is just so amazing and so inspiring.
And this is the Zihuatanejo moment for me, man. I meet this guy, this old black Muslim guy named Muhammad, and he's a career criminal. He's been in and out of prison his entire life, but he's the only one in Dallas County Jail that thinks differently than the rest of the guys in there that are telling me I have to get into a gang, because everybody's telling me I have to get into a gang. I can't survive without a gang. But Muhammad is a real positive guy. He's always got a smile on his face, and every morning he comes up to me and he talks to me. And this one particular morning, it's right before he's about to bond out of Dallas County Jail, and the prison bus is getting ready to come pick me up. And he's telling me, don't give in to these fools that tell you to get to a gang. But he said, let me tell you what prison's really going to be like. And that's when he breaks down the racial dynamic of prison. And he tells me prison is all about race. This is a black man telling me this. He's like, every inmate in there wants it to be about race. He said, you're expected to get your own race and stay with that race the whole time you're there. So he's telling me the white gangs get the first dibs on you. The Aryan Brotherhood, the Aryan Circle, the White Knights, the Woods. He said, you fight the white gangs first. You survive the white gangs, then you fight the black gangs, the Crips, the Bloods, the Gangster Disciples. And the white gangs will send the black gangs after you. Your own people are going to send the black gangs after you because everybody wants you to get where you're supposed to be. He said, but if you survive all that, and you can survive all that, you'll earn the right to walk alone. And he told me, the strongest man in prison always walks alone. He told me the truth about fighting. He said, you don't have to win all your fights, but you do have to fight all your fights. You know, he's like, some days you win, some days you lose. He said, it's okay to lose. Just get back up. That's what he's telling me. Just get back up. Then he shares with me this story. He says, I want you to imagine prison as a pot of boiling water. And he said, anything we put in this pot of boiling water will be changed by the heat and the pressure inside this pot. He said, I'm going to put 3 things in this pot of boiling water and watch how they change. A carrot, an egg, and a coffee bean. So here's where I first heard the story of the coffee bean. The summer of 2009 in a jail cell in Dallas County, exactly 10 years before John Gordon and I would write that best-selling book in 2019 of the same name, The Coffee Bean. So he walked me through it. He said, if I put a carrot in that pot of boiling water, the carrot goes in hard but becomes soft quickly. The carrot got beat. He got robbed. He may have gotten killed. You don't want to be the carrot. The egg in the same pot of boiling water goes in with a hard outer shell that protects from the outside. But inside that shell, that soft liquid core, the yolk, the heart, becomes hardened. And he says, if your heart becomes hardened, you're incapable of giving or receiving love. And he said, if you're incapable of giving or receiving love, you don't come back as someone your parents recognize. But he told me the coffee bean, the smallest of the 3 things, had the power to change the water into coffee. Because the coffee bean has the power inside of it to change the world around it. He said the coffee bean is the change agent. It changes the water to coffee. He said, if you want to come back as someone your parents recognize, you got to be like that coffee bean. In fact, the last words he ever says to me, Pete, as he's bonding out of Dallas County Jail, the prison bus is getting ready to come get me. He has 4 words for me on the way out the door. He said, hey, West, be a coffee bean.
Oh.
And Pete, this is the 4 words that changed my life, man. This is the Ziwataneo moment, right? I've got something I can visualize. I've got something I can see. And if I could keep the power of the coffee bean, if I could keep the power inside me, it means the power's not in the world around me. It's not in the hands of the criminal justice system, the guards, the other inmates. It's in me. And if I could keep the power inside me, I wouldn't just survive prison. I could thrive inside that prison. And I want your audience to know that the power's inside them too. It's not what goes on around you. The crazy politics, social problems this country has right now, that's not where the power is. It doesn't come from social media, the media itself. It comes from within each and every one of you. And if you keep the power inside you, well, you don't survive your adversity, you thrive in your adversity. And I know this for a fact because I took the coffee bean message to the biggest pot of boiling water there is, a level 5 Supermax in the state of Texas, brother.
And you said when you entered prison, which speaks to what you're sharing right now, you looked at prison not so much as a sentence, but all of a sudden your perspective was able to shift into that coffee bean. It became an opportunity.
That's it. That was it. And it was my first cellmate in prison that busted that open for me, that knowledge for me, that I had to stop looking at prison as a punishment. I had to start seeing prison as an opportunity. This first cellmate, this little bank robber from San Antonio named Armando, and I call him Carlos in my book, The Change Agent. But he shares with me, I'm struggling at first when I get to prison. I had to fight. For the first 2 months, I fought everybody, man. And I'm struggling. And I'm like, I can't figure out how to be a coffee bean. And he told me it's because of the way you think. Your problem is you think prison's a punishment when you have to train your brain to see prison as an opportunity to work on yourself 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You get to become the best version of yourself possible while you're here. And it was that shift of thinking, because your thinking is everything, that helped change it for me. But, back to sports, Pete, here's something that I want to share with you about whenever I was in prison, because it was a baptism by fire. I mean, it was just like Muhammad said. I mean, it was the white gangs first. The minute I walk in, within 20 minutes of walking into that Supermax, I was in a fight with the guy for the Aryan Brotherhood. This guy beats me from one side of the day room to the other. And for the next 2 months, I probably get in 3 dozen fights and I lose 75% of those fights. But I win every one of those fights because I showed up to the fight. Because Muhammad told me, you don't have to win those fights. You got to fight those fights. 2 weeks it took me to get through the white gangs. After that, it was the black gangs, just like Muhammad said it would be. 6 weeks in, man, it's a Monday morning. I wake up. Still fighting the black gangs at this point. The only thing I haven't used to earn my respect inside this prison is my athletic ability. Now, remember, like LaDarren said, like I told you, man, God blessed me to be a tremendous athlete, Division I college quarterback with a cannon for an arm, right? I'm a great athlete, but the rec yard where you play sports, it's the most intimidating place I've ever seen because it was the most segregated place I've ever seen. Every sport on that life sentence rec yard was segregated by the color of your skin. It was like going back in time. Let me walk your listeners through the rec yard, right? You go out there, they got a sand volleyball court. The sand volleyball is for the whites and Hispanics only. The handball walls, those big walls you see in prison rec yards, those are handball walls. All the races can play handball, but if you wanted to play handball with a partner and double up, your doubles partner has to be the same skin color as you. You can't mix the races out there. The weight stack, man, just like you see in prison movies, man, everybody wants to push that iron. And all the races get to lift weights in prison, right? But if you want someone to spot you, someone to work out with you, your partner, your spotter has to be the same skin color as you. You can't mix the races. Pete, you couldn't even sit down and eat a meal at a table in the chow hall with people from a different race. Race was everything. So that Monday morning, 6 weeks in, my back is against the wall. I don't know how much more violence I can take. And I face my fears. I go out to their rec yard. I pass up all of the other sports I just told you about, and I headed straight for the basketball court. Now, who do you think runs the basketball court, Pete?
The Blacks.
The Blacks,
Yeah.
The brothers, man. They run it, man. And no white boys that look like me are allowed in that basketball court. But, man, I grew up in Port Arthur, Texas, Pete. I've been the only white boy in the basketball court. My dad broke the color barrier and sports pages in Southeast Texas, man. I go out to the basketball court that day because I know this. I know that in America, sports is the great uniter. Sports is the one thing in this country that brings people together like nothing else can. I mean, think about it for a second, Pete. Before there was Martin Luther King Jr., there was Jackie Robinson. Before you integrated lunch counters in the South, you integrated locker rooms in the South.
Yes.
I knew sports would make me whole. And I go out there that Monday morning, I bet on myself. I get myself in a game of basketball, and I got in way over my head, Pete. They let me play some basketball, but it wasn't 5-on-5, brother. It was 9-on-1. My own teammates don't want me out there. But I keep showing up every day, man. They can't get rid of me. And I learned 2 things about adversity that week, Pete. 2 things I'll never forget. Adversity is never as bad as you think it's going to be, and you're always capable of way more than you think you are. Because it's back to your thinking. And sometimes when we see adversity in life, we allow overthinking to get in the way of overcoming. And after a week of basketball in that court, guys circled up around me the last day. The Blacks circled up around me and said, man, you don't have to worry about the Blacks the rest of the time you're here, Wes. You're good to go. So 2 months, man, 2 months into prison. The violence is finally over. The threat to my physical safety is gone. And I've got to get to work. I've got to become that coffee bean. And it's hard, right? I mean, because I miscalculated. Prison was way hotter of a pot of boiling water than I thought it would be. Muhammad, one of the last conversations I had with him in Dallas County Jail, I asked him, I said, what do you think I'll find more of when I get to prison? And, man, his answer was profound. He was such an intelligent guy. This is what his answer was, Pete. He said, you're going to find more eggs, West. And here's why you're going to find more eggs. The egg is the natural evolution of any human being in any difficult situation. He said, people have a tendency to become an egg before they become anything else. He said, you're about to walk in one of the most difficult situations there is on earth. He said, the truth is, West, you'll probably become the egg too. And, man, 2 months in, this dude was right. He was right about everything he said, but it was that conversation with Carlos, this little bank robber from San Antonio that really shifted my mindset. And it's this lesson that goes with this too, right, Pete? That in life, the messengers can come from anywhere.
Yeah.
They won't look like you all the time. They don't come from the same background as you. They got other experiences than you. Some of your messengers are coming from a place that, man, you may think, how could this person teach me something? One of mine is a Black Muslim man in county jail. Another one, this little Hispanic bank robber serving life in my cell.
There have been guys, Damon, that have shared stuff in meetings that I've been in that I know for a fact what they shared has been profound and changed me and changed my life. And they'll go back out and they die. Like,
yeah.
And what a God thing that is, right? Just kind of God working through people. You know, this happens for you. And now your life of service in prison really starts. And it catapults you to life on the outside. But if you don't mind walking me through a little bit of that experience when you start to get into action, and you mentioned it, momentum. We talked about it offline before. You're speaking everywhere. You're in so much demand. That tailwind starts to kick in, and it's like it feels good, and then you can't stop it.
Yeah, it's incredible. And I'll tell you where it all started for me and where it still is for me, and what has busted this open for me is when I got into a 12-step program recovery inside that prison. Everything shifted for me. Now, I didn't just start getting the answers as to why I was, my addiction was the way it was. I got the rules for living a good life, right? I got in and started working the 12 steps in this program recovery. And now I'm going through all my fears and all my resentments. I'm cleaning the baggage up. Now I'm cleaning up my side of the street for the first time. I've never had, my side of the street's never been clean, Pete. And now I'm in prison. I've got a good side of the street, and I found out you can't clean someone else's side of the street. That's their side of the street to clean. Started working on my side of the street, started working those steps, became a better person. I learned about a life of service. I learned the secret to life is servant leadership. Servant leadership was helping other people reach their goals in life, helping to raise others up. And in prison, the way that the servant leadership thing looked is, I didn't have the ability to go to college classes in prison because I had a bachelor's degree already from North Texas. But I could teach other men how to read, how to write, use the skills that I had. That's the thing about a community, Pete. When we all decide we're going to be a part of a community, we chip in what our special skill is to that community. And that's one of the things I started doing inside that prison. When the lady from parole was talking about changing the prison around me, is that I got everybody to buy into this idea that we're a community, and everybody's special skill was thrown out into the middle of the day room, and we could all work with each other and become the best version of ourselves possible. Change the way people think by seeing the world around them in a different place. Everybody started picking up, one of the examples I had in prison that I would pick up trash if I saw it. And at first people made fun of me, man, why are you picking up that trash? That's not yours. Yes, it is. I live here. I want the home that I live in, the neighborhood I live in, to be clean. And you should too. You should want that for yourself. Well, now guys started taking better care of themselves, to have more respect. They're working out. It was that being that example of service to other people that sometimes we have to see that, because that's really one of the things people say. Why don't you think, Damon, why don't you think more people live a life of service? And I think one of the reasons is they don't see an example of it. You got so many people that are so into themselves that they can't serve other people. You can't be into self and be selfless, In the program recovery, the big book of AA, I learned about these 4 spiritual principles: unselfish, honest, pure, and loving. Unselfish, honest, pure, and loving. What these 4 spiritual principles became for me is my matrix to plug all of my decisions into, my thinking, right? Now, if something I want to do is not unselfish, honest, pure, and loving, it's on the other side of the spectrum over there. Things like being selfish, self-seeking, self-want, self-desires, self-delusions. When you live in all of those self-words, you're useless. But when you're living in the 4 spiritual principles, you're useful. That was my word for the lady from parole. When the lady from parole is telling me, you got, and that's when she comes up to the parole interview, back to where we kind of start this thing, right? She's like, hey, 2015, I come up for parole, Pete. And look, I got no expectation to make parole, not at 7 years on the life sentence. But I come up for parole. I'm eligible because my crimes were not aggravated. I didn't hurt anybody. I don't have a violent criminal past. And so I'm eligible for parole at 7 years. Don't think I'm going to make it, but I go to the parole interview that day. And that lady from parole, like she said, I got one question for you, but the answer to my question isn't in that file. And after we go over my whole story, my whole time in prison, and how I changed the prison around me, she said, here's my question, Mr. West. Let me get down to it. She said, and I want you to think long and hard about this answer, because your life depends on this answer. She said, if you could be remembered for being anything in life, anything at all, she said, tell me what that would be, but give it to me in just one word. Go. Pete, I knew the answer to that question. I've been living a life in recovery since 2011 inside that prison. I've been working my steps. I've been becoming that coffee bean, my Zwatts and Nao. I could see it. I could touch it. I could feel it. And I gave her her answer immediately without hesitation. And I said, useful. I just want to be useful. Because, Pete, I think at the core of being human, everybody wants to be useful, right? We want two things out of life. We want to belong and we want to be loved. And if those two things can be met, if we can find a way to do those things, everybody feels like they're part of something bigger than them. We're on the same team now.
And that's why being useful, I think, is so huge in recovery, right? Because
yeah,
it feels good to be useful. And then you start to get the feeling from being useful that you got from like alcohol and drugs. And you're like, oh, whoa, this works. I can do this.
Yeah. It's like, and that's the thing, man. We know what it's like to be useless, right? So many people, you go to these meetings and you hear from people, like you said, people that lived under a bridge, people that, have been in bad situations. I mean, and we also learned that what you've done's been done before.
Yeah.
One of the things that keeps people in their addiction so much is they think they have such a low value of themselves. They can't forgive themselves for the things they've done. But if you would just go to meetings and throw $1 in the basket, have a cup of coffee and hang out for an hour, you'd hear stories from people that you realize, man, my story's bad, but not that
you lose
bad.
The shame. You lose the shame.
You lose the shame. There's a guy in a meeting one time I sat in there, he killed his own brother. He was blacked out drunk and choked his brother to death. He killed his brother, man. Wow. I thought I was a bad guy. That's horrible, man. Imagine, and I'm not saying he's bad, but I'm saying that you understand that what you've done has been done before. And when we're writing down our resentments and we're trying to figure out how to get through this and we got to make our apologies to people, the biggest resentment I had to get rid of on my list, on my 4-step, was me. I had to forgive me, because I was the one that imploded an entire life. And, there's no one else to blame. The stuff I did to my family, if anybody would have put what I put my family through, I'd kill them, right? But I'm not going to kill myself. But instead, I just loathed myself and hated myself. And that's one of the things about working the program recovery. But the program recovery, Pete, I think is so great. It gives us tools, right? November 16, 2015, I make parole that day. I walk out of a Texas prison, 7 years, 3 months, and 18 days later. I walk out of a Texas prison, but I'm not a free man. I'm on parole to the year 2073 in Texas. So I got a little more time. From the recording right here, we got 49 more years, just to give people perspective. But I'm not worried about being on parole. I'm a coffee bean, and I work a program recovery. My program recovery is the most important thing in my life. I learned this in recovery, Pete. Anything I put in front of my program, I will lose. I've done it before.
Yeah.
I've burned my entire life to the ground. My sponsor, the day I get out of prison, the first thing I do is I go find a meeting, find a home group, right? It's the most important thing to me. I've got to find this home group, and I got to get a sponsor because I don't want to go back, Pete. But I know that if I don't have a program recovery that I'm actively working, I'll go back to prison. So I get my sponsor that first night. We'll call him Ray. We'll protect his anonymity for this podcast. So Ray says, I'll be your sponsor as long as you're willing to do a couple of things. One is that you'll go to any length I tell you to stay sober. And if you ever have a thought of drinking or doing drugs, call me first. So the first thing happened about a month out of prison. We're having a sponsor-sponsee meeting. I'm miserable, man. And he can see it in me. He walks into the meeting that day he and I are having. He said, Damon, I'm worried about you. He said, I think you're about to go back to prison. And I'm like, man, my eyes got big. I'm like, I just got out of prison. What are you talking about going back? He said, well, you're stuck inside yourself. No one that's stuck inside their self is working a program recovery because remember, we have to be selfless. We have to get outside of self. And I know what he's talking about, man. And so I'm like, look, man, what do you want me to do, Ray? I mean, no one will let me come in and talk to their school. I had this dream of talking, right?
Yeah.
I'm an ex-con, Ray. No one's let me. This whole dream is gone. I don't know what to do with myself. He said, man, you're really in trouble now. He said, now you got self-pity. When self-pity comes in, now you're going to go back out there and use again. He said, what you need to be doing is you need to be out serving people. And I'm like, but Ray, where am I going to go serve? I'm an ex-con. He said, there's a lot of places, man. He said, you just got to get out of your mindset that it's going to be this one thing. He said, you know what? Go to a senior citizen center. Go to the front desk. Do it this weekend. He said, go to this weekend to a senior citizen center. Go to the front desk. Ask them for a list of people who never get visitors. He said, they're going to give you a list a mile long. He said, I want you to spend Saturday and Sunday this weekend visiting people that don't get visitors anymore. That senior citizen center. Come back on Monday. Let's talk again. Pete, I went to that senior citizen center. And I got the list. They just gave me a list of some of these people that I'm hanging out with hadn't had a visitor in 10 years. 10 years, man. Imagine, I mean, I can do it because I've been in prison, but in people that are in prison because of their addiction, they know this, man. Imagine going all that time with no one to sit there and listen to you, no one just to sit there and have a conversation with, you know? When I went out there that weekend and I came back on that Monday, a changed person because I learned how to serve other people. And before I started doing the speaking stuff, that was my service work. You know, now my service work is going out and sharing my story, my experience, strength, and hope. That was my service work.
So
at the very beginning.
Two more things, all right, because I know you're a busy man. You got to get out of here. I want to hear how you fell in love. You have a wonderful relationship with your wife. That's difficult for guys in recovery sometimes. And then I want to hear about how you ended up becoming you finally had the ability and the opportunity to convey the magic that you're conveying to us right now. But it happened through a situation at the College Football Awards. So I want to hear about your wife and your relationship, and I want to hear about how you got that opportunity.
So we'll start with my wife and my family. So I'm married to a woman named Kendall Romero. She's got a daughter, my little stepdaughter that's 12. Her name is Clara. And I met Kendall. Kendall was a nurse practitioner when I met her. And literally, I was living in my parents' spare bedroom, making just above minimum wage. I'm on parole the rest of my life. Just got out of prison. I'm 40 years old. She meets that guy. and I mean, and she falls in love with that guy. I mean, imagine what a Tinder profile like that would look like, right? I wasn't on dating apps. I wasn't brave enough to be on a dating app. But I mean, I didn't have any expectation to meet the love of my life in that situation. But she fell in love with that guy, man. And we started dating. And eventually we got married. I'll tell you, really interesting date. We got married on May 18th, 2019. Now, May 18th, 2009, a different big event happened. That was the day a jury sentenced me to life in prison. 10 years to the day I get married for the first time in my life. I become a husband and a stepfather. Or as my wife says, you went from one life sentence to another. So it's really funny. But no, it's great. I've got this incredible life. And honestly, I didn't think that was possible. Like when I'm laying in my bunk in prison, that is impossible to me. Like, how am I going to find someone to love me again? All the mistakes that I've made in life, the stuff I've done, who wants to love that guy? And if I find someone that will love me, what is their family going to think, right? There's going to be a problem there. Man plans and God laughs, brother. I mean, I have found all that stuff is come into my life. And man, my family is so great. They know I have to go to my meetings. Like there's family stuff that I've had to miss because I need to go to a meeting. They understand it. They get it. They want me to be there. You know, they know that those meetings are the most important thing for me to go to. Those.
How do you prioritize those meetings on the road?
I got two different apps on my phone. And you can plug in the zip code wherever you are, and it tells you where the meetings are in that area. Before I had the apps, I would use Google and just kind of find the websites or find meetings.
That's what I would do. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but I find meetings all over the country, man. I'll go to at least 2 meetings a week. You know, I try to hit 3 if I can. But I'll be honest with you. I mean, it's rare that I get 3 in anymore. I talk to my sponsor all the time. We talk almost, weekly. We work the steps every couple of years, go back and rework it because you pile up more garbage as you live. And so, I'm not one of those guys that thinks you can work the steps 13 years ago and be fine. I think you need to work it from time to time. But, as I was plowing through life and working and becoming a speaker, in those first couple of years, there weren't a lot of places for me to speak, Pete. I mean, like, honestly, you can't go knock on the door of a high school and say, I just got out of prison, I want to talk to your kids. Like, they will chase you down the street. They chase me. So I knew I had to get in my reps. And, playing sports, you played sports, anything you want to be good at, you're in sales, whatever it is you do in life, you got to get in your reps. You got to practice, right? So in lieu of having a place to speak, in my parents' spare bedroom, there was a mirror in there, little vanity mirror. Just happened to be there when I moved in. Every night for 2 years, I practiced this presentation in front of that mirror. I got in my reps, man. Not this presentation, but the presentation I give today in front of sports teams, corporations. I mean, I'm on the road 25 days a month now, right? But that presentation was built in my parents' spare bedroom in front of a mirror because I didn't have reps to get in front of other people. And I was waiting for that right opportunity, that right moment. And I really thought it would come through the world of college football because I played college football. problem is it's been 20 years since I took a snap. These college football coaches don't know me. I don't know them. But a buddy of mine in 2017 that works for KHOU, a guy named Mike Orda, he was a photog there at KHOU. He calls me up. He says, hey, Damon, tonight in Houston is the Bear Bryant Coach of the Year. They're going to name the best college football coach in America. The 8 best coaches are going to be here tonight. I've got an extra press pass. I'll sneak you in. Get to Toyota Center right now. So Toyota Center from where I live in Beaumont, where I'm working in Beaumont, is 90 miles, man. I drive that 90 miles. He sneaks me in the back door, hands me a press pass. There I am. Pete, I'm on, and everybody's there. USC, Wisconsin, Penn State, PJ Fleck, they're all there. And I'm running up to these coaches with all the best energy in the world. I'm shaking their hands. I'm giving my pitch. Why do you should bring me in to talk to your team? And every coach I met that night slammed a door in my face. They all told me no. One way or another, they told me no. In 1 hour, I got 7 no's from the 8 coaches in the room. That's a no every 8 minutes, man. I'm in the corner of the Toyota Center. I'm licking my wounds. I'm feeling sorry for myself. And the voice in my head is screaming at me, go home. Get out of here, Damon. What are you even doing here? The voice in my head called me an imposter. But do you know what I quit doing a long time ago, Pete? Listening to myself. And you shouldn't listen to yourself either, because the voice in your head could be fear talking to you. And you don't want to listen to fear. Fear's a liar. So that night in the corner of the Toyota Center, I'm pumping myself back up. I'm like, Damon, you survived prison. You survived something way worse than this. That last coach, he's going to tell you no to your face, and then you're going home. So, Pete, I stalked Dabo Swinney around that room. And I looked like a crazy person, man. I mean, I'm hiding behind fake plants, trying to ambush Dabo.
Trying to find the right time to just kind of poke in and introduce yourself.
I'm weaving in and out of people, man. I'm trying to get to the front of the line. Dabo sees me. Security, they see me too. They're going to throw me out of Toyota Center. But I finally get in front of Dabo, man. I give my best stuff for about 60 seconds. I come up for air. And Dabo's like, man, you got a card on you? So I gave him my card, and he says, hey, I'll check you out. And he's gone, man. And everybody, he just beat Alabama 2 nights before. He's the hardest guy to get to in the room. He's gone, talking to the rest of the people waiting in line to talk to him. And I left after that, Pete, because I got my last no. But I'm going to tell you what I felt good about, that no right there, because that no meant that I left it all on the field. And that was the lesson I learned from sports growing up. You give it your best shot. Sometimes you come up short. Or like Muhammad said, you don't have to win all your fights. You got to fight your fights. I went home and forgot about that night. 4 months later, I get an email from the director of football operations at Clemson University, this guy named Mike Dooley.
Yeah.
Mike Dooley's email said this. He said, hey, Damon, Coach Swinney met you at the awards show in Houston. He would love to have you come talk to the team. Do you have August 1st open?
Wow.
I'm like, Mike, I got every first open. I could be there tomorrow if you need me, man. So August 1st, 2017. August 1st, 2017, I go speak to the Clemson Tigers.
By the way, how long was this after the ceremony? Was the ceremony like February, something like that? And then
ceremony was in January. The email came in April.
Unbelievable. Okay, keep going.
And I've got to wait till August now for this presentation. And incidentally, so I got to wait until August for that presentation. So August 1st, 2017, I go speak to the Clemson Tigers, defending national champions of college football. And after that presentation, man, Dabo's in my face. And Dabo's a high energy guy, just like you see him on TV. He's as advertised. He's like, oh my God. He said, man, I've never heard a story like that. I've never seen my players respond like that to a speaker. He said, have you been to Alabama yet? You talked to their football team? And I'm like, no, Dabo, I've been to Clemson. I hadn't been anywhere, man. So he said, well, I just text Nick Saban from the back of the room. We'll see what happens with that. When I land in Houston the next day for my trip to Clemson, I turn my phone on. There's a voicemail and a text message from the director of football operations at the University of Alabama, the Whale. The message said this. Hey, Damon, Dabo called Coach Saban last night. Coach Saban can't wait to hear your story. How does August 21st, 7:30 p.m. work for you? Pretty good. I can make it to Tuscaloosa, right? I'll be there. But Dabo didn't stop there, man. Dabo, he starts kicking open every door to college football. Now Kirby Smart calls, Lincoln Riley calls, Chip Kelly calls, Lane Kiffin, Ryan Day. They're all calling my phone. But the real magic in my life was yet to happen. It was August of 2018, 1 year after that first presentation at Clemson. I was working at this law firm in Beaumont, and my cell phone rings. And on the other end of my cell phone is a guy named John Gordon. Now, John Gordon is one of the biggest motivational speakers and authors in America. This is the Energy Bus guy. This is the guy that I follow every day on. Yeah, I follow John for for my inspiration at this point, man. And so I'm like, John, I know who you are. How do you know who I am? He said, Dabo Swinney. He said, I was just speaking to Clemson's football team this morning, Damon. Dabo brings me in the office for 30 minutes to tell me your entire story. And John said this. He said, Damon, the world needs a Coffee Bean message, Damon. Let's deliver this message to the world. He said, will you write a book with me? We'll call it The Coffee Bean. And in the summer of 2019, exactly 10 years after I first heard the story of the Coffee Bean from Muhammad in a jail cell in Dallas County, the book, The Coffee Bean, comes out, took the world by storm. When I say the world, it was a bestseller here in America for like 6 weeks. Gets a global publishing deal attached to it. It starts getting reprinted in every language in the world: Chinese, Spanish, Arabic, French, Italian, German. And then in 2020, a global pandemic hits. The entire world becomes a pot of boiling water. And the entire world is looking for the right message to get through this pot of boiling water. And so many people came to the Coffee Bean. Pete, my life took off like this. And I'm showing vertical for the people listening. Yeah. It just shot straight up into the atmosphere. I can't even tell you. I mean, it was hard to even be prepared for a life changing that fast. And overnight, I've become one of the biggest motivational speakers and authors in America, because it all comes back to that message of the Coffee Bean. But it really goes back to that night in Houston, Texas, January 12th, 2017, when I got 7 no's and I'm in the corner that night. And the voice in my head told me to leave. And I'm Pete. I was this close, and I'm holding my fingers up an inch apart. I was this close to walking out the door that night. If I walk out the door that night after those 7 no's and I don't stick around and talk to Dabo Swinney, we're not having this conversation today. The world doesn't have the Coffee Bean message. So my message is this. You don't quit. You don't give up. You don't throw it in. Wayne Gretzky may have said it best, right? You miss 100% of the shots you do not take. You got to take your shots in this life, Pete.
Amazing, Dave. I want to just add one thing, because this is for people listening that I, the recovery and the 12 steps and like the energy, because you already are an energy guy, right? Authentically, I would imagine the way that you were put on this earth by your parents. But that energy that you get from recovery, I mean, like you connect with people in the rooms, and then you have the confidence to hang around for that last no, to fight your way to it. And you strike like what I'm saying is like, there's something different about somebody who's got your personality and that's working a program. It catches other people. They're like, wait a minute, there's a reason everybody's reaching out to everybody else about Damon West at this time, because you've got something, and it's recovery and it's you and uniquely who you are, but it's recovery. And I think that is so cool about your story.
That's the glow, man. That's the glow within me now, is that program recovery. Everything in my life, people that have worked at program recovery, if they sit through my presentation, whether you're at a corporation in America that brings me in, a sports team or a school district, whatever, people that have been in recovery, they come up to me afterwards, they're like, man, that was like sitting through one of the most intense meetings I've ever been to, because it's all about the principles of recovery that are in my presentation, because that's what my life is about, Pete. This program recovery that was so freely given to me that I give it out to other people. One of the tenets we have, and this tenet, is you got to give it away to keep it. That's your energy. That's how you show up for everything. Nick Saban told me, man, how you do anything is how you do everything. So I show up with that same energy and intensity no matter where I am. It's perspective too. I know what a bad day looks like, Pete. Every day that I wake up and my feet don't hit the cold concrete floor of that prison cell, I'm going to have a good day. I'm going to win. And I'm going to get guided with this prayer that I start off with. And people that are in recovery, I want you to listen to this prayer. I started praying this prayer when I was in prison. I started working that program recovery in 2011. I say it every single morning. And whatever faith you are, whatever religion you are, faith, whatever you want to call it, your higher power, you can have this prayer, because it belongs to everybody out there. I get up in the morning and say, hey, God, put in front of me what you need me to do today for you, and let me recognize that when I see it, because I don't want to miss whatever that thing is. Amen. Now I'm out looking for ways to serve the world. And that is how I stay sober, Pete.
You're the best, Damon. I appreciate your time so much, man.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your time too, man. Thanks for your patience to get this done. I'm so glad we finally got to meet and do this, and let's stay in touch, brother.
Oh, for sure. And do you have LD's contact? I'm going to share it with you just so you have it.
Yeah, share it with me, please. Yeah. And if anybody wants to get in touch with me, this the best way to find me for speaking or whatever it is damonwest.org, DAMONWST.org. Social media.
We'll put that in the show notes too.
Yeah. At Damon West 7, all this stuff on social media. So.
All right. Thanks, Dame. I appreciate it so much, man.
Thanks, Pete. Appreciate you, brother. Thanks.
You got it.
All right, bye.
Thanks so much for listening to The Payoff with Pete. Once again, I'm Pete Souza. And of course, we are part of the Rogue Media Network. All kinds of good podcasts you can find at roguemedianetwork.com. And of course, you can find this podcast and all those other ones wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, other spots like that.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production. Are you a podcaster? Let's talk podcast hosting. Are you tired of your current podcast host? Need real support in a community that gets it? At Rogue Media Network, we offer top-tier podcast hosting services to help you thrive. From hosting and distribution to dedicated support, we've got you covered. Starting as low as $25 a month. Join our community of passionate podcasters today. Contact us at hello@roguemedianetwork.com.